Security Chief Krathax stood in the equipment bay of the human embassy, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he tried to process what he was witnessing. 3 young Velcrin warriors, barely past their adolescent molt, were thrashing around the polished floor with human security helmets wedged firmly onto their massive, triangular heads. "How?" Krathax hissed through his translator. "Did this happen?" Ambassador Chen leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, trying very hard not to laugh. She had dealt with diplomatic incidents before, trade disputes, territorial disagreements, cultural misunderstandings. But this was something entirely new. "They wanted to try on the gear," she explained, her voice carefully neutral. "Standard cultural exchange. We show them our equipment, they show us theirs. Nobody expected this." The youngest Velcrin, who couldn't have been more than 15 cycles old, made a pitiful whimpering sound as he pawed at the helmet stuck on his head. His claws scraped uselessly against the reinforced polymer. The helmet had gone on easily enough, sliding past his narrow snout and settling behind his forward-facing horns. But Velcrin's skulls flared outward dramatically at the back, creating a shape that human engineers had never considered when designing protective gear. "Can't you just pull them off?" Krathax demanded. Human Security Officer Martinez stepped forward, latex gloves already on. "We tried. The problem is the locking mechanism engaged automatically. It's designed to prevent removal during combat situations. The helmets detect pressure and seal themselves." Krathax's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Velcrin were apex predators from a death world, feared across 12 sectors as formidable warriors. Their empire had conquered 17 systems. They had reduced the Korthian fleet to scrap metal in under 6 hours. And now 3 of their cubs were stuck in human security equipment, making distressed noises that sounded uncomfortably like puppies. "Why would you design equipment that traps the wearer?" Krathax asked. "It doesn't trap humans," Martinez said defensively. "Human heads are more cylindrical. The release mechanism is on the inside, pressure activated by temples. But Velcrin don't have temples in the right place, and their heads are too wide at the back to release properly." The middle Velcrin cub, who had been silent until now, suddenly bolted for the door. He made it 3 steps before crashing into a storage locker, unable to see properly through the helmet's visor, which was positioned for human eyes rather than the Velcrin's forward-set vision. He collapsed in a heap, limbs tangled, and began making a keening sound that made everyone in the room deeply uncomfortable. "We need to get these off," Ambassador Chen said, her amusement fading into genuine concern. "If word gets back to the Velcrin Dominion that we trapped their young in our equipment, this could become a serious diplomatic incident." "Worse than that," Krathax muttered. "Do you know who these cubs belong to?" Chen felt her stomach drop. "Who?" "War Master Vecthun, Supreme Commander of the Velcrin Eastern Fleets, conqueror of the Horsehead Nebula, holder of 47 military honors." Krathax's translator somehow managed to convey his exhaustion. "And he's supposed to arrive here in 3 hours for the treaty signing." The room went very quiet, except for the muffled whimpering of the trapped cubs. Martinez cleared his throat. "So, hypothetically, we need to free these cubs before their extremely powerful and probably very protective father arrives?" "That's not hypothetical," Chen said. "That's our immediate reality. Options? The helmets are military grade," Martinez explained. "They're designed to withstand plasma fire, explosive decompression, and chemical attacks. We can't just cut them off without potentially injuring the cubs. The interior lining is form-fitting and pressurized." "Can we access the release mechanism externally?" Chen asked. "Not without the Master Override Code, which is held by Central Command back on Earth. Even with quantum communication, getting authorization would take at least an hour." The largest of the 3 Velcrin cubs had stopped struggling and was now sitting very still, making a sound like a motorboat engine. It took Chen a moment to realize he was purring. Is he okay? She asked, concerned. Krathax tilted his head. He's embarrassed. Young Velcrin purr when they're stressed. It's a self-soothing behavior left over from when they were pack animals. That's actually adorable, Martinez said, then immediately looked like he regretted speaking when Krathax turned all four eyes on him. They are apex predators, Krathax said firmly. Apex predators stuck in our helmets, Chen pointed out. We need solutions. People. A young human technician named Park, who had been quietly observing from the corner, raised her hand tentatively. Ma'am? I might have an idea. Everyone turned to look at her. The helmets have a safety feature, Park explained. If they detect signs of medical distress in the wearer, they automatically release. Elevated heart rate, restricted breathing, that sort of thing. It's meant to allow medics to access injured personnel. So you're suggesting we make them panic? Martinez asked skeptically. No, Park said quickly. But the sensors aren't species-specific. They just measure generic biosigns. If we could manually trigger the distress indicators, the helmets should automatically unlock. Chen looked at Martinez. Would that work? In theory, Martinez admitted. The sensors are in the helmet lining. If we could convince them that the wearer is in medical danger, yes, the emergency release would activate. What triggers it? Krathax asked. Martinez pulled out his data pad, scrolling through specifications. Rapid pulse increase, temperature spike, or disruption to normal breathing patterns. The system is looking for signs of shock or cardiac arrest. Can we fake those readings? Chen asked. Park nodded. The sensors are basic biometric readers. They're not sophisticated enough to distinguish between real distress and simulated conditions. If we could increase the temperature inside the helmet rapidly or disrupt the airflow, the system should interpret that as a medical emergency. How do we increase temperature without hurting them? Krathax demanded. His protective instincts clearly triggered, despite these not being his own cubs. Heat packs, Park suggested. The chemical kind used for muscle injuries. If we activate them and hold them near the sensor ports on the helmet, the temperature spike should be enough to trigger the release. It was crazy enough to work. 15 minutes later, they had assembled a collection of instant heat packs from the medical bay. The Velcrin cubs watched with wide, uncertain eyes as the humans approached them with the strange packets. This is going to feel warm, Chen explained gently, activating a heat pack and holding it near the sensor port on the first cub's helmet. But it won't hurt you. Just stay calm. The youngest cub's tail twitched nervously, but he held still. The heat pack activated with a soft hiss, releasing concentrated warmth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then there was a quiet beep and a hiss of pressurized air. The helmet seals released with a soft click. Chen carefully lifted the helmet off the cub's head. He blinked at her, his large amber eyes wet with relief, and immediately began grooming his disarrayed head feathers with his tongue. One down, Martinez said, moving to the second cub. 2 to go. They repeated the process with the middle cub, who had calmed down considerably after watching his younger companion's successful release. The helmet came off with the same satisfying click, and he shook his head vigorously, his ear frills extending and retracting in what Krathax quietly explained was a sign of relief. The largest cub was last. He had stopped purring and was watching the proceedings with intelligent eyes. When Martinez approached with the heat pack, the cub actually tilted his head to give better access to the sensor port. Smart, Chen thought. Learning from observation. That was a good sign. The final helmet released, and the cub immediately began checking his younger companions, sniffing them and making soft, chirping sounds. The younger two responded with their own chirps, and soon all three were grooming each other's head feathers, clearly bonding over their shared ordeal. Crisis averted, Martinez said, gathering up the helmets. Should I file an incident report? Absolutely not, Chen said quickly. As far as official records are concerned, today was a completely normal cultural exchange with no complications whatsoever. Agreed, Krathax added, though I would suggest that in future cultural exchanges, perhaps test equipment compatibility before allowing young warriors to interact with it. Noted, Chen said dryly. The door to the equipment bay slid open, and a massive figure filled the doorway. War Master Vecthun stood nearly 8 feet tall, his battle armor gleaming, his head crest raised in full display. His eyes, the same amber as the cub's but harder, sharper, scanned the room with predatory intensity. "Father," the youngest cub chirped, and all 3 youngsters rushed toward the War Master, talking over each other in rapid Velcrin, too fast for the translators to keep up. Vecthun listened, his expression unreadable. Then his gaze shifted to Chen, to Martinez, to the stack of helmets in the corner. For a long moment, nobody breathed. Then the War Master made a sound that could only be described as a deep, rumbling laugh. "My sons tell me," he said, his voice like grinding stone, "that they attempted to wear your battle gear and became trapped. They say your people freed them with clever thinking and gentle hands." "It was a simple misunderstanding," Chen said carefully. "A matter of incompatible anatomy." "Indeed." Vecthun placed a massive hand on each of his sons' heads in turn. "They also tell me they were treated with kindness, not mockery, that your people did not shame them for their predicament. They're young," Chen said simply. "Young people make mistakes. It would be cruel to shame them for curiosity." Something shifted in Vecthun's expression, a softening around his eyes. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect in Velcrin culture. "My people have long said that humans are dangerous because they are clever and adaptable. Today I see another reason for your success. You are also kind, even to the children of those who might be your enemies." "We prefer to make friends rather than enemies," Chen said. "A wise preference." Vecthun gestured to his sons. "Come. We have a treaty to witness." The 3 cubs followed their father, but the youngest paused at the doorway, turning back to look at Chen and Martinez. He made a small, awkward bow, clearly imitating his father's gesture, and then chirped something that the translator rendered as, "Thank you, soft hands." Then they were gone, and the room erupted in relieved laughter. "Soft hands?" Martinez said, grinning. "Is that what we're called now?" "Could be worse," Park pointed out. "Could be head trappers." Chen sank into a chair, the tension finally draining from her shoulders. "Note to self. Update the cultural exchange protocols. Section 12, test equipment compatibility. Section 13, keep heat packs on hand. Section 14, never, ever tell this story at diplomatic functions." "Too late," Krathax said, his mandibles clicking in his species' version of a smile. "This story will spread through every embassy in the sector by tomorrow. 3 Velcrin warriors defeated not by weapons or tactics, but by poorly designed headgear." "At least it has a happy ending," Martinez said. "Treaty gets signed, everyone goes home safe. The cubs learned a valuable lesson about trying on alien equipment." "What lesson?" Park asked. Martinez grinned. "That humans might be soft hands, but we're clever soft hands." Through the window, they could see War Master Vecthun and his sons making their way across the embassy courtyard. The War Master's hand rested on the youngest cub's shoulder, protective and proud. Whatever else happened today, Chen thought, they had earned the respect of one of the galaxy's most formidable warriors by showing compassion to his children. Not a bad day's work, all things considered. Even if they would probably need to redesign every piece of safety equipment in the embassy before the next cultural exchange.